Greetings. Welcome to A Charge to Keep. Thank you for tuning in the last 3 weeks. We're excited to be here with you again. As you know, I am Jeremy L. Williams, and I'm here with my friend, Dr. Lynn Hargrow. And as has become our custom, we want to begin with prayer, read some verses from the scriptures as we think about how we are preparing to move into the general conference that'll be held in Dallas. So, Dr. Hargrove, you mind praying for us?
Absolutely. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for each and every opportunity that you give us to make your church better. And now, God, as we go into these conversations, we ask that you will be with us. Send your spirit to rest on us, to give us wisdom, open our hearts and our ears and our minds so that we might hear what you have to say, God. We believe that in this type of fellowship you are present, and there is also enlightenment available for us, God. And so we ask that you will just move, work, speak as we know you to do. We ask these things in the name of Jesus. Because we believe it's done, we say amen.
Amen. Amen. I want to read two verses to us from Psalm 90, or actually a couple of verses. Um, the scriptures read from the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn us back to dust and say, turn back, you mortals. Now let's skip down to verse 11. Who considers the power of your anger? Your wrath is as great as the fear that is due you. So teach us to count our days, that we may gain a wise heart. The words of God are already blessed. So, again, welcome to A Charge to Keep. And you may be wondering if this is your first episode. You might want to go watch the other ones to see, but also Dr. Hargrove will tell us a little bit about what A Charge to Keep is.
Absolutely. So Dr. Williams and I, we love our church. I think that's important to say. That's where we begin. We begin out of a sense of love and responsibility. And so the charge in question is both the responsibility that we have to our local charge, to our local church. And so this is a series where we are asking some questions about proposals of policy that we will be dealing with at General Conference in Dallas, the CME General Conference in Dallas, which is next week. We'll also be live next week. We'll talk about that. But we have been asking questions about how various policy proposals will impact the local church and the local. We're looking at these policies, we're looking at these proposals, we're looking at resolutions with the local church as a hermeneutic, asking questions about what will strengthen the local church. We're centering the local church because we believe that the local church is the most important part of this church. It is the center of the church. And that is important to lift up in a space like this because we spend a lot of time in general conference worried about the connectional church and the bureaucracy of the church and various societies and things like that. The machine of the church, as one scholar put it. We're lifting up the local church. We have this hermeneutic. If you don't know what I mean by the local church's hermeneutic, please feel free to look back at some of our previous episodes, but we'll also put a little blurb in the comment section to help folks get a better understanding of what that is.
And if you want to know a little bit more about it, we invite you to come live next Thursday. We'll be streaming from Facebook as well as on YouTube so that you can ask some questions of us live as we are thinking through how we are going to keep the charge. And as you can see, the question that Dr. Hargrove has raised, it's right here on our screen, is as we approach all of the resolutions and the various decisions that we have to make as delegates, the question that we should really think about, that we are inviting you to consider as a central question is how would any policy impact the local church? Whatever resolution, whatever elected office, whatever suggestion, how does it impact the local church? And so, this is not just about things that seem explicitly about the local church, but also how is the larger connectional church and its operations, its funding, its organization, what does it contribute to the local church, and what does it take away from the local church? So part of thinking about how all of these pieces go together is thinking through how the larger administration of the connectional church directly impacts the local church, whether from apportionments, whether from the attention and focus that is called upon at the higher levels of the church. And so we are thinking about this question of focus on the local church, not just about like officers and things in the local church, but also about how does our connection to the larger connection, how does that benefit the people who are sitting in pews every week, carrying on the work of the ministry and actually providing the very fundamental resources that make any of this happen. And so we say we're focused on the local church, but that focus on the local church is in some ways also a focus on, like, theologically the big C church, and also for us the connectional church, and that's concerned about the spiritual or eternal aspects. But because this is a business meeting, it's also about the temporal aspects, about how these policies impact the local church, different policies that are being raised. And we have some resolutions that are kind of thinking about the big church. And we are inviting you to think about how we should think about those larger concerns through the prism of how it will impact the local church. Right? That sound right?
That sounds right. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. So let's take a look at one resolution that caught our attention. If Dr. Williams, will you? Thank you. So this is a resolution that comes to us from the general officers of the church.
Peace. Let's see.
So this resolution comes to us from the general officers of the CME Church. It's a resolution regarding general officers' speech, debate, and vote in the general conference. And it can be found in the resolution book. I don't want to spend the time to tell you what page it's on, but it is. This is in the resolution book. I'm going to read straight. We're going to go straight to the be it resolved. You can read the whereases. So what does this resolution propose? Paragraph 201.2 of the discipline of the CME Church shall be revised as follows. The active general officers of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church shall be members of the General Conference with the privilege of debate and vote. The general officers shall be subject to all rules adopted by the General Conference regarding their recognition and participation in debate. The general officers' vote shall be added to the number necessary to determine the count for election and passage of resolutions. The general officers shall not subtract from the regular or clergy delegates allowed from their respective annual conferences. Any conflicting legislation in the Book of Discipline shall be null and void. So, this is let me try to interpret what I think this is trying to do in layman's terms. The general officers, as of right now, paragraph 201.2 indicates that general officers are ex officio members of the General Conference, which puts them in sort of the same category as bishops, or a similar category as bishops and judicial council members, where they do not participate in the voting, and they don't vote, and if they do debate or are allowed to speak, they have to be recognized as not members of the body. And so this resolution, I understand, is trying to shift or wants to shift the status of general officers from ex officio members to actual voting members with all of the privileges that those of us who are elected from annual conferences have. So the question now is, what does the local church have to gain or lose from us saying yes or no to this? Um, the general conference, and you get this both from a sense of reading the discipline, and you get this from a sense of just the history of Methodism. The general conference is the democratic legislative body of the people. And so it makes sense that in our discipline, and this has just sort of been the case in the history of Methodism, that general conferences are made up of representatives of annual conferences, which is made up of representatives from the local church. And so it's representative democracy, but the interests that are it is designed in such a way that the interests that are represented are the interests of the people, the interests of a local church. You have the only way you get to general conference is if you have been either elected from an annual conference as a delegate, if you're a clergy, if you're a member of you're a member of your annual conference, or if you're a member of your local church. And I I'm not I'm not certain how general officers or the authors of this resolution might help us to understand how their participation in voting in the general conference would what interests would be reflected, whose interests would be
Yeah,
reflected,
and if
right?
I
Whose
may,
interests are they representing by having a vote?
if I
Go
may, I
ahead,
think what's
Jeremy.
also worth highlighting are a couple other um, uh, in terms of like our disciplinary concerns, is that the general conference, in line with what you've represented, does not select its own representation, right?
Right.
As you noted, all of the delegates are representative of other bodies from annual conferences, and then, as if for lay, coming from local church congregations. And so, to that end, the general conference doesn't give anyone a vote, doesn't elect anyone to have a vote. Even bishops are not elected by the general conference to have a vote. And so this would be unprecedented in a number of ways. And we have to wonder if this is in the direction of creating the type of democracy we're talking about, especially when we note that part of the design of the general conference in Methodism is for it to have equal representation
Mhm.
between clergy and lay, to try to help democratize and level out some of the power we've mentioned before, that clergy generally wield a significant amount of power within churches and ecclesial organizations. And but part of Methodism is in recognizing that in this meeting, lay people have equal representation as clergy. The challenge with the general officers um, receiving voting rights uh, or voted opportunities is that they actually take power away from the lay, because then there would be even more votes for clergy, especially as our general officer council is currently organized. And so we have to say, is this a democratic thing? And the big question you've asked us is, would this impact the local church? Does taking away lay representation or diminishing it, does that ultimately support the local church? Um, and part of what we're inviting you to do is to say, this is the way we should think about this kind of question,
Yeah.
rather than just say this person is seated in a place. The question is, does their seat actually help them to better see what's happening in local churches? And I just think that local churches and pastors in local churches probably have some of the best perspectives on what would be good for local churches.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to be in agreement. I'm because both of us we know um, several of the folks who have participated in authoring this resolution. I'd really be curious to hear from them when we get to Dallas. What what does this add to what does if we say yes to this, if we vote with concurrence, what does changing the general officer status add or subtract from um, our process? Or I want to ask this a different way. I really do want to know what interests, what are the interests here that are trying to be represented, that general officers want to represent as a part of this conversation.
And part of what we're inviting us to think about um, are are for the delegates to come with, I would say, from my work, a hermeneutic of suspicion, or an inquisitiveness, or better yet, come asking questions. Realize this is your opportunity to help make decisions, so that whatever decision you make in regard to something like this is not against any of the general officers. First of all, let's just say that we are not critiquing any of the general officers. What we are saying is, for delegates, their question should be, how is this going to make life better or worse for local churches? And if that answer is not clear, then the question about who is it serving is a really bigger question. And it might lead us to say, maybe we don't need to move on this now,
Mhm.
or this is not a great use of our time. That's how we want you to be thinking about these types of concerns and questions.
Mhm.
And I think that this brings us to another resolution that we're thinking about, around how it would help us to think about, um, bringing these resolutions and our decisions through the prism of how is it going to impact the local church. We- um, and and one of the resolutions comes from someone from my home state of Alabama. So should we dig into that one?
Yeah, yeah. Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at it.
All right. You want to say a little bit about this? It's about another general department ministry.
Yeah. So so maybe just as a way of preface, I think we're going to see at this general conference quite a few different proposals, both in resolution form and I understand as the College of Bishops are sending some down as well, some recommendations about managing and consolidating our bureaucracy. Um, and the general officers are a big part of that. They're one part of it. They're not the only part of it. I hope we don't lose that. There are other ways that we can sort of manage our bureaucracy, but we've got a lot of these kinds of resolutions that are inviting us to look at our general office or general department structure. So let's see what this is a resolution to alter or dissolve. This is to dissolve the ministry to men, which is a general department in the CME Church. And here's the be it resolved. Um, Therefore, be it resolved: the Department of Ministry to Men should be dissolved, deleting Chapter 56 as the General Department of Ministry to Men of the Book of Discipline of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, 2022, and move to Chapter 58, Connectional Commissions and Committees, as the Commission on Ministry to Men. This transition should alleviate the General Department program budget of $25,000. And there's a reference to where you can find that in the discipline, and be replaced under Schedule C, Connectional Operations, as the Commission on Ministry to Men, with a budget of $10,000 for a savings of $15,000. The Commission on Ministry to Men should be added in the next available sequential paragraph of Chapter 58, and the verbiage should read as follows: There shall be in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church a commission that is responsible for developing and promoting throughout the church an effective Christian ministry for lay men. This commission, in collaboration with the General Department of Lay Ministries, shall be named the Commission of Ministry to Men. The purpose of this commission is as follows: and then I think it lists the verbiage that it wants to replace it with in that chapter 56 section. So this resolution wants so dissolve is I don't want people to get thrown off by dissolve, because
Right, right, right.
it's not a complete erasure of ministry, lowercase m, ministry to men. It is a proposal to transform ministry to men as a departmental function or a general departmental function to a commission, to a connectional commission, much like the Commission on History and Archives, or the Commission of Concerns of Women in Ministry. Those kinds of commissions that don't don't receive the kind of budget and bureaucratic management size that we see of other general departments. So that's what the transformation is. You and I talked about this a lot, and this is where I think it is important to revisit something we said at the very beginning when we started this podcast. And we're both men, and we thought that was important to say, because not just for the sake of anything other than in the church, men have a privilege. We have power. We are represented in the church. We lead the church historically. This is
And
not just the Black church. This is the church, period. Right?
and dare I say disproportionately so.
Yes.
And not just in that we have a majority of the leadership roles in our denomination, 10 of the 12 bishops, but active bishops, but more so, we as men make up a smaller percentage of the population of the church.
Right. Right.
Now, one could hear this and say, well, then this is an invitation to increase the ministry to men because we need more men. And so we wanted to be clear that we're not saying that more men, more people in the church is not something that we should be desiring or seeking. That we do want more men. We want more people. We want people to participate in God's work that we are a part of. What we want to say is that we have to think about what is actually behind us singling out men through a general department in this way, in an organization that is led overwhelmingly and disproportionately by men who are actually already the majority. Does strengthening men um, look like supporting a general department in this way? Or does it actually look like us supporting women and like the Women's Missionary Society that's already doing the work to support and push up men, predominantly men, clergy, and otherwise? Part of what we're doing is we want to think about these things more, not just have a general department to say that we are doing this because of the general department. We want to look at where the work is actually happening, who is actually training people, who is actually developing, and is that what this is doing? Again, this is not for us to be casting aspersions against the ministry to men, but it is an invitation for us to think about what does it mean and what does it look like to have this general department in an organization that's already overwhelmingly led and shepherded by men.
Yeah. Um, there is also, as a historian, you it's hard to ignore that in any religious institution in the United States, women outnumber men. And that has always been the case. That has always been the case, that women outnumber men in religious institutions in the United States. volumes and volumes and volumes of American religious histories, of denominational um, census, religious census, like all of this data is available to show us that women have always outnumbered men in religious institutions. And so there's wording in the discipline about the ministry to men that says something to the effect of, we want to invite men to come back to church, um, or restore the numbers of men. And I think we sometimes imagine, the church like we do the country. That the church used to be a particular way, and it used to have a particular gender makeup. Maybe there was more gender, more gender. There were. My sense is that we think that the men have gone away, that the men have gone away. And so I think we need to interrogate that
and
assumption.
and dare I also lean into that assumption that in some ways black men have gone away, but it's not because of a lack of religious fervor or zeal, but we live in a country, especially in the United States, that has actively attacked, incarcerated, and disenfranchised the men who would be the very constituency of our churches. And so in some ways, right, if we really are thinking about ministry to men, our work in social justice and social concerns would actually be the place where we can reach the men who have been impacted by the prison industrial complex, men who've been left behind through educational inefficiency, and in these ways, if we actually are caring about doing ministry to men, it's probably not through a general department in this way, but it's through actively um, considering how we counteract the the anti-blackness that is a part of the American project that is both unaliving our brothers and um, separating them away from their families, their communities, and putting them in cages.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you. I thank you for saying that, Jeremy. And two things in response. One, those same processes that are unaliving men, in the sort of macro level, are also unaliving women, black women. And so for me, I'm so much more interested in the question of what do we do to minister and grow our church among people? How do we get more people? Period. How do we get more young people? How do we get more older people? How do we get more men, more women, everybody? Right. The problem is not that we're lacking so many men. In my mind, it's that we need more people, right? We need more people, period. And so, because those same processes that are attacking men and are affecting men in our society are affecting um, a lot of us. And so, I think that's important
Yeah,
lift up too.
and I want to add that and say I'm in complete agreement, and there are so many outside of just black men who are definitely negatively impacted by the the oppressive forces that we find in our country. But one of the reasons I wanted to highlight when we having this conversation around black men is because of the way that often the conversations move into the idea of black male erasure.
Hmm.
And I want to name that there are active forces erasing them, but it's not the women in the church.
It's not right, 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 right,
It's not the women in the church who are erasing black men.
right.
And I think you're right. The all of these other demographics are negatively impacted by our criminal justice system and the various um, industrial complexes that see our people in our lives as sacrificial victims to the gods of capitalism, etc. Not to get on my soapbox, but particularly to say that like I think that the intention of the ministry to men is very noble, but to actually help black men um, we should think a little bit more capaciously, dare I even say radically, in the idea that radical means at the root, which is the larger anti-blackness that is impacting our brothers and then really all of us by extension. But our brothers really need for us to commit all of our energies, not by segueing or separating into a separate organization,
Mhm,
but as you were saying, for us all to come together, for especially for all the lay people to come together
mhm, mhm.
and
That's
use
one
their power
that
together, that they are better together, even in our local churches, better together. Because even when you had a church barbecue, you might have the men out there grilling the meat, but it's the sisters making the sides.
Mhm, mhm,
We
mhm,
better
mhm.
together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll say this last thing, and then I know we're at our time. Because what I hear as a reason for this resolution is also what this might save the local church in terms of resources. So the author took the care to um, give us some cost savings here, to give us a suggestion as to how we might reallocate the budget for the general department, and save some money as having it be a commission. We would also save, man, I think I said this a few episodes ago, we would also save money in a general officer salary and pension. Those are potential savings. But um, I think I want to invite us to look in the discipline and do this math and see how much we might potentially save. And we the challenge here in consolidation is to save money and not spend it somewhere else, because ultimately I think our goal is to give some relief to the local church. We ultimately want to find ways to empower the local church. One way we can empower the local church is for us to demand fewer resources from the local church so that the local church can thrive in its community, right? And
And actually
so
impact those men.
and actually do that work. Exactly, 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 exactly. Um, there's some questions about efficacy of that department as well that I'm sure we'll talk about at the general conference. But yeah, we want to invite all of you. As you know, we'll continue to talk about resolutions. We'll be live next week. We're getting closer towards it, but we really do want to invite you all to ask these kinds of questions about all of these resolutions, all of these policies, what recommendations come from the College of Bishops, what recommendations come to us from the Episcopal Address, things from the floor. The question that you should be asking is, what is this going to do to my local church? How is this going to impact it? How is this going to bring power or attention away from it? How is this going to add or bring attention to it?
And so we look forward to seeing you next week live. And if we don't see you live, then we're definitely going to see you around the halls of the Anatole in Dallas. So we look forward to seeing you. We look forward to doing this good work. Hopefully, we all are going to be charged up to be able to keep this charge. We've been excited to be on this journey with you, and we look forward to continuing as we head to Dallas, which isn't that far from me.
Yeah, yeah,
As the rest of you
yeah.
come to the DFW Metroplex, welcome, and I look forward to us having more conversations. So keep your charge, and we look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
God bless you.